Hey everyone, I know, it's been a while. This is Chad Shryock, and I'm still your host of the 10 Questions podcast. The last few years have really been a pressure cooker for me and my family due to circumstances that I had no control of and wouldn't wish on anyone. Mentally, I've probably been as low and checked out as I ever have, but I'm trying to keep on the sunny side of life, as they say, and get on with things. So, my first apologies are to the few guests that recorded episodes with me over a year ago and then never heard your story on the podcast. I've got some great guests for this season of 10 Questions, and their wisdom and stories from the wetplate world deserve to be heard by this community. Second, to everyone that reached out saying how much you missed the show, all three of you, and when it would be back, thanks for lighting the spark of motivation to get back into the game and release some new episodes. I know many of you are just getting back from the high of John Coffer's last tintype jamboree, and as much as I wanted to attend, it just wasn't possible this year. I hope that someone picks up the reins for future get-togethers, whether on a small scale or large, and continue what John put in place more than 25 years ago. I can't promise that there will be a new episode every week, but stay tuned online to see when the next episode drops as I collect more stories of the people that make this craft so special. So without further ado, let's get that guitar track playing for the next season of 10 Questions. Hello there. You're listening to 10 Questions, where we discuss the wet plate collodion process and the photographers that create these unique images known as ambrotypes and tintypes. I'm your host, Chad Shryock, wet plate photographer for Pork Pie Photography based in Fort Collins, Colorado. In each episode, I've asked a modern-day practitioner to sit down with me and talk about how they got involved with this vintage process, share some information on their gear and studio, and provide some valuable insights into their creative process. So whether you're just beginning to dabble your toes in the collodion ethers, or you're a seasoned silver bath expert, hang on and see what develops with 10 Questions. This week's guest comes to us from the hills and hollers of Tennessee. A film photographer since high school, she received her Bachelor's of Fine Arts in Photography and Integrated Media from Ohio University in 2016. She's been involved with gallery management and is a recent co-founder of a 6-acre collective of creatives and makers called Whistle Pig Farms. Based in Luttrell, Tennessee, I'd like to welcome Kelsey Dillow to 10 Questions. Hi, Kelsey. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
Oh, hi, Chad. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, maybe before we dive into your collodion work, tell me a little bit about Whistle Pig Farms and what goes on there.
Oh, wow. Yes. Well, so Whistle Pig Farms kind of came to be in 2020. I was working at the time at Aramont School of Arts and Crafts in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And which is just, if anyone's ever been there, craft schools are incredible. And Aramont specifically is wonderful. But I was the gallery director there at the time, and my husband was working there too. And we met some really wonderful people, Logan Shimanowski and Ashley Mays there. And we all got to be really good friends and realized that we all had a common goal or desire to create kind of like a communal shared art space rurally. We were interested in, communal art making spaces and also growing food and, just living out in the mountain away from all the hubbub in town. And we we spent many a lunch break kind of hanging out and dreaming up this place that we eventually named Whistle Pig Farms. But we were one of those crazy lucky people that we decided, why wait until we're older? Let's do this thing now. And we found our little, 6, 7 acre plot in August of 2020. We bought it as fast as we possibly could, got a crazy, ridiculous deal on it because, again, it was that time, that weird time in 2020
Right,
where
and
housing was
COVID, yeah.
mildly affordable. Yeah. And we've been here ever since. And so my partner and I live in the house that was on the property, and Logan and Ashley had already built a tiny house that they were living in. So they moved the tiny house onto the property as well, and it had a pre-existing like pole barn that had been used in the past for horses. And so it was still filled with horse shit. It was rough. And we, over the past, 5 years now, have been slowly converting it into a more clean, closed in, indoor ish art studio. And then we, have a big garden here as well. So we make art and we make food together.
Okay. Is there a mix of other creatives that are there? I mean, what else as far as creative arts takes place there?
Yeah, we do a lot of different mediums. So I'm obviously a photographer. My husband, Michael France, he is a jack of all trades, master of none, master of everything type. He tinkers in a lot of different materials, metal, leather, woodworking, things like that. And then Logan and Ashley are both printmakers. Logan specifically does a lot of illustration and comic book work. And Ashley does a lot of like screen printing. They do all kinds. I mean, we do all kinds of stuff. We do a little bit of ceramics. We do a little bit of sewing. Anything that like tickles our fancy for the moment, we find a way to do it.
Right, right. Do you have a blacksmith?
Michael, I call him Frenchie. His real name is Michael. But he does a little bit of blacksmithing. He used to work for a knife maker in town, and so he's got himself a little bit of a forge. In the winter, in the summer, it's miserable to do that stuff in there.
Nice. Yeah, that's something that's always kind of fascinated me is being able to manipulate metal and make nails and hinges and all that kind of fun stuff out of it. I'm always really intrigued by anytime we go to like Jamestown or some of those areas where they still have displays of that kind of thing. I think that's always pretty cool. I could just sit and watch those folks all day long.
Oh yeah, we are process oriented people, so we get that.
Great. Well, Kelsey, we're going to try something just a little bit new to kind of kick things off this episode. You may or may not be old enough to remember David Letterman, and he used to do these kind of top 10 lists. And we're going to do a quick round with you, except I'm going to ask a question, and it's going to require maybe just a really short, quick, off the top of your head kind of answer.
Boy howdy, all right.
And we're gonna start. So the first few are just kind of quick kind of answers. Just throw them out there. So number 10,
Okay.
how many plates have you shot?
Oh my God, I don't know. Ooh, I'm such a bad guesstimator. 1,000? I don't know.
1,000. Okay. Number 9, what is your favorite alternative process outside of collodion?
Platinum palladium. I want to learn it so bad.
Okay. Number 8, do you recommend smiling or not?
Don't do it.
Okay. We'll get into that. What is the largest plate poured?
8 by 10.
8 by 10. Okay. Number 6, what's your favorite lens?
Oh, I'm so not a gearhead. The one that I have is affordable.
Okay. Number 5, what is your favorite subject?
Oh, well, people and environment in the same shot.
Okay, very good. All right, so these next three, these are going to be kind of forced picks. So I'm going to give you kind of an either or kind of option here. So pets or kids?
Oh, kids
Okay. In front or behind the camera?
behind.
KCN or hypo?
Typo.
And last one, are you a history nerd?
I have become a history nerd. I did not start out that way.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks for playing.
That was fun. I learned a lot about myself when I have like no time to answer.
Exactly. So I read that you were shooting some film in high school. What was the motivation to use film at that time?
Okay, my history and photography is really funny. I remember the first picture I ever took that like blew me away, and it's so dumb and it's so silly. But I was at a New Year's Eve party. I was in like eighth grade, and I had I'm 32, so I grew up with MySpace, and I had one of those dinky little pocket cameras, before they put all the things into one phone.
Okay.
And I remember it was just a dinky little, digital camera, and I took a picture of a bowl of cookies, okay? And the depth of field, like, I didn't know that's what it was called at the time, but like the depth of field struck me. And I was like, wow, this is really gorgeous. And so that's the first time I ever took a picture and was like, whoa, I want to do this again. And so I had been shooting that little dinky MySpace camera for a long time. And he was my basketball coach at the time, called me Dillo, and he was like, "Hey, I've got this old film camera. Do you want to use it?" And I didn't know anything about film in, like ninth, 10th grade. But I was like, yeah, sure, that looks awesome. Like just the camera itself was gorgeous. It was like a Canon AE1. And so he gave me that camera and he had, a few rolls of like expired, I don't even know what kind of film. I think it was probably color, and I like shot them like all in like one day, and I loved it. And we lived down the road from the Walmart, and I would take my film to Walmart when they had like the quick 1 hour photo developing. And not my proudest moment, but I would steal all those prints. Like I would get them developed and I would just walk around the store with them.
Uh,
um I just had this like rebel thought that was like, well, I already paid for the film once, why would I pay for it again?
it kind of makes sense. I can go along with that.
That's what 15-year-old me had totally logicked that out. But so that's how I got started in film. I was photographing just myself and my friends, and I was just kind of the group documentarian. And it has been a real treat as I age, because so many of my core memories are literally locked into like film and pictures that I have still. I didn't really realize it at the time, but I was really good. Like I look back at some of those pictures and I'm like, damn girl, you had it.
Nice, nice. So I take it do you still have the first picture of the bowl of cookies?
I don't. It's lost to the digital ether,
Yep.
Like that's the problem with digital, right? Like I've got an iPod Classic, one of the OG iPods with like my entire middle school life on it, and it's locked up and I'll never access them again.
That's too bad. Okay.
I
Yep.
know.
One of the bad things about modern media, for sure.
But all those first film pictures, I still have them. So
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I've still got old Polaroids that I would have took whenever I was a kid, and I can remember the old. I think it was like a 110 type film camera. It was on like a little spool of little
yeah.
tiny little negatives, and taking
Yeah,
pictures as a kid with those things.
totally. Yeah.
So what was your first exposure to wet plate then? How did you find out about this process?
So I feel like the first time I was like, whoa, what's that? I was in college at Ohio University, and I had a history of photography class. And I remember seeing those pictures, like the Civil War era pictures, and I just remember being really like specifically struck by them. I didn't know anything about the process. I didn't even know what they were called. But the first time I saw them up on, like the PowerPoint that the professor was giving, I was just completely struck by like how they made me feel strange. They made me feel like I was looking directly into another world. Like they just had, even on the screen, a physicality and like high strangeness to them that made me feel like I was really looking at the people in the photograph. They made
Sure.
me feel different. They hit me different. And I remember being like, whoa, what is that? How do I like just tell me more? And nobody in the university at the time was doing that. Nobody knew how to do that. Nobody seemed interested in doing that. So it just kind of sat in the back of my mind for a long time of like, wow, that's those are incredible images. Like just like this big mystery to me. And I wanted to learn how to do it eventually, but put that on the back burner in my mind. And then the first time I ever saw it done was Joe Brown. He came through Knoxville one day, and I remember nudging my husband awake, and it was a Sunday. I don't know how I ended up following him on Instagram, but I was like, "Put your pants on. We're going into town, and we're getting our tintype made."
How long ago was
Um,
that?
that had to have been 2020. He was like popped up outside in a parking lot somewhere. And yeah, we showed up and I was like, wow, I have been seeking this out for so long. Can you just like slow down and let me watch you do it? And he was so kind and gave me the full rundown, and it was wonderful and amazing. And I never would have thought that like that would turn into it would I never would have thought that this is what my life would turn out to be like. Like I never thought I would see that guy again. I never thought that I would actually end up doing this. Like it's wild to kind of trace back and see those hinge point moments in your life, right?
Right, right. Well, that's awesome that Joseph was kind of that traveling tintype evangelist that
I
brought you
know.
into it. how how helpful was your formal education in photography to what you do now?
It depends on, like, it depends. So I think that it was really helpful in that it introduced me to the dark room. I didn't enter a dark room until I was in college. My high school had already turned their dark room into a locker room long ago. Um,
Okay,
so it was important for me to step into a dark room. It was important for me to like see the physicality of process because that's just like what I'm all about now. I love process. Like the end product is great, but show me the process. And so it was really important for me in those ways. I didn't learn anything about like, artificial lighting, or I didn't learn a whole lot of like technical, hard boots on the ground skills other than silver gelatin printing, which I still practice. But it was important for me to be exposed to those types of things. And obviously, if I would take that part out of my life, I probably wouldn't be here. So it's important for sure. I
sure.
wish I would have learned more like technical things when I went to college for photography, which you'd think you would. But so, it takes all kinds.
Yeah.
That's what my mama says.
What kind of work were you doing in the darkroom? Was this black and white film processing or?
Yes,
Okay. Yep.
yes. It was mostly, yeah, 35 mil, 120, 4x5, black and white. Now, I did have, I think, one of the last classes they ever taught in the color dark room. They were one of the last places to still have a functioning color processor, but it was a beast of a machine. Like it was always broken down. It only worked sometimes. It was a nightmare.
Sure. Sure. So, and just another question here on your background before we start talking in depth in collodion. We had mentioned that you were a gallery manager for, is it Aramount School of Arts?
Yes.
Okay. What was the collection there focused on?
So Aramont is a craft school. They do, I describe it as like a art camp, summer art camp for adults. Where you like go for a week and you stay in the dorms and you have a meal plan in the dining hall, and there's like studios in every medium you can imagine. But they had multiple galleries on campus that I was in charge of and a permanent collection. So I worked in galleries before Airmont also. But basically what I was responsible for was putting together exhibitions, jurying the application pool and deciding like who was going to be featured in the space. I did a lot of curatorial work, and I took care of their collection, like their permanent collection, which was really ceramic heavy, but they had, printmaking, woodworking, fiber, weaving. Aramont started with a lot of traditional craft, which is like, I think what really started my interest in history and Appalachian craft history specifically.
Okay, but no collodion, no tintypes in there at
No,
that time.
Aramont, like they all of their old photography classes, all of their gear had been stored away in the attic. I don't know if you've ever heard of Penland School of Craft. But Pinland is just a couple hours away across the Blue Ridge Mountains, and they have an incredible state of the art, brand new darkroom. And so years ago, Aramont kind of bowed down to Pinland and let them have photography. So,
Got it. Okay. Yep.
but but the enlarger that I use now for film printing, I did manage to buy from Aramont back in their photography days.
Okay. All right. It's good to get a good deal on some stuff that they're not using.
Yeah, for sure. That's always my MO.
Kelsey, what is one thing about you that not many people know?
Oh boy. Okay, here's a fun fact. I used
Okay.
to pierce ears at Claire's.
Ah, okay. All
No,
right.
but I am an introvert that performs extroversion, I suppose,
Ah, okay. All right. Perfect. We're going to
which
talk
is
about that too.
helpful in this process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. All right. So you had seen Joseph Brown doing the process out in a parking lot. It sounds like you told him to slow down. What was the next step for you? How did you dive deeper into figuring out what this was all about?
Well, so at this point, I was still working at Aramont, and I had maintained a dark room at home, like in a bathroom or a closet. And I was like, I don't know about everybody else, but I find photography to be a very solitary medium. And so when I started working at Aramont, I was exposed to all of these other mediums that are so community based, like, seeing everybody around a wood kiln, at all hours of the night, feeding that kiln for their ceramics class. Like, it took a village to do that thing. And it just inspired the hell out of me to see like so many people, like to see a craft that required a community. And so I was like, dang, I really, really want this for myself. Like I had been around all of these mediums for so long that I was like, how do I find this in photography? And so I was still working at Airman at the time, and I found Lisa Elmley in Paw Paw, West Virginia. Lots of folks are probably familiar with her work. She's
Yeah,
incredible.
for sure.
And so I found her, and she, does workshops on her little plot of land up there. And I'm from West Virginia originally, so I was like, hell yeah, this is great. So I made the trek up there, and I took her beginner's workshop for 3 or 4 days, camped out in a little tent in her yard. It was fabulous. It was wonderful. Like as soon as I got back from that workshop, I had already, I had a dark room at that point already, and so it didn't take a whole lot for me to kind of pivot my practice more towards wet plate. And so, yeah, I like after seeing Joe do it, I was like, I've got to figure out how to get my hands on this stuff. Like, and I knew I wanted to learn from somebody. Like, I didn't want to learn on the internet. I'm much more interested, again, in like, how do I make this community based? How do I be around a lot of people and learn this thing? Like, I watched so many people do it places like Aramont and Penland. And so, yeah, Lisa's workshop completely changed my life. And like, I never really, like, I didn't take the workshop to become a portrait photographer. Like, if you told me back then that I would end up being a portrait photographer, I would laugh. But I learned it for my own personal, like, body of work reasons. Like, I learned it because I was so attracted to the way that the images hit. And then it's funny, I just, when I got back to my own studio and tried to, recreate what happened at that workshop in my own space, I just like, it felt like I opened my studio door and I had a line of people waiting that wanted to be photographed. And so that's how I kind of honed in my own studio. And then I just never stopped.
Oh, that's great. I mean, you had, since you had a dark room, I mean, you were familiar with seeing film being processed and kind of the development process. But
Mhm.
what do you remember most about your workshop? I mean, what was like the thing that was just like, oh, this is what I'm doing?
The way that she structured her workshop was really wonderful. So like the she paired us off, and so I worked with a man named Sebastian, and the two of us made our first tintype together. So like it was inherently community based. You had to rely on somebody else with you. You were taking turns on which one of you was doing which part of the process. So you got to learn from literally right beside you from the other person's mistake. You weren't just learning from your own mistakes. You were also learning from the person beside you's mistakes and successes. So
Yeah.
it was really cool to be able to share that experience with somebody else.
Okay, no, that's great. If you get a great plate, it's kind of a combination between the two folks, and if something messed up, then it's kind of accountability spread out across a couple of people too. Then,
Yeah, yeah, it was really a fun way to do it.
yeah, for sure. So you consider yourself more of a portraiture photographer
Sure, by day.
by day, yeah. And you did mention that you prefer to take portraits with some natural background. So
Yes.
would you say that you prefer natural light versus artificial light then?
100% yes. Like as much as I love the way that like doing, an artificially lit portrait in the studio really makes you focus on like a person's face, like I really do love that. But I'm just so much more interested in like the environment that the person is inside of and like their, like the full ecosystem, I guess, of an image, if
Sure.
that makes sense.
Yep. You mentioned that you grew up in West Virginia, and
Mhm.
I think in your bio it says that local folklore plays heavily in your work. Maybe talk a little bit about how Appalachian culture has influenced your work.
Well, first of all, Chad, it's Appalachia. No, I'm
Ah,
just kidding. Um, But yeah, so like I mentioned, I learned the process not at all to be a portrait photographer, but to feed into my own like conceptual work, and which I've actually never gotten or made time, I guess, to actually do. That's one of my goals this year. But yeah, I've always been really interested. I was raised in a Southern Baptist church. We were 5 feet from snake handling, is what I like to say.
okay.
Just real close to that.
Yep.
A lot of laying on hands at my church that I grew up in. But I've always been really interested in the ways that religion and like I used to use the word witchcraft, but now I kind of use the word like occult type practices really overlap, at least in the way that I was raised in religion. And like, I grew up in the Bible Belt, Southern Baptist Christianity is abundant where I'm from. And there's a lot of mysticism and folklore even within that too. And I just love the way that those Venn diagrams overlap. I find it so fascinating because I think there's a lot of similarities between the, Southern Baptist Christianity and the thing that they're really afraid of, right? So a lot of my early work explored that thought line, I guess, and I think which is why I was so attracted to wetplate, because there's just such a surreal like spookiness to this process that I'm really attracted to. And the thought or the idea, the false idea that photography is like a truth teller, right? Like I'm really
Ah,
interested in what it means to tell the truth in photography, because I don't think that that really exists. And so I'm just, yeah, I guess my brain can get a little all over the place when I think about all of these things that I'm interested in, and then I try to really weave together in my own personal work, I
sure.
guess.
So it sounds like maybe this is something that you had kind of started down this road early on. Is it something that you feel like there's still some runway left for you to go back to?
Yes. So I have been, tintype took over my life really hard for the first 3 years. And I'm finally getting to a place where I can say no to certain gigs in an effort to prioritize the work that I want to actually make for myself. So I'm finally like steering my ship back into the lane that I wanted to be in the first place, while still, funding my life through portraiture, I guess.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about your studio. So you mentioned that you've got a kind of a barn space that you're in the process of kind of cleaning up. What's the setup there? I mean, do you have your dark room is in the same location? I take it you've got power out there for studio shots, or do you do that somewhere else?
Yeah, so I do it all. I do it all in our barn studio. So we've got it, or everyone's kind of got their own quadrant of the barn space. So in my space, I have right now, I've just been mainly using my travel darkroom because we're in the process of, I've got another external shed on the property that I have set up with my enlarger and like silver gelatin situation. But we're in the process of trying to pick that up and move it and attach it to the barn to create one dark room to rule them all, because my landmates also need a dark room for printmaking purposes. But so right now, I've been mostly working out of my travel darkroom, which is a modified version of the darkroom built in John Coffer's manual. So my partner and I kind of built that together a few winters ago. And then I've got a, kind of my studio portrait set up in there with my backdrop and my strobe lights. And then we've got, some really gorgeous spaces outside on the property that I do natural light portraits in.
Okay, nice. How
Yeah.
often are you getting out and doing kind of pop ups where you need that remote darkroom set or that portable darkroom set up?
Yeah, so I usually do 1 to 2 events per month is what I try to do. And that is, in this time of year, oftentimes that's at festivals or street fairs. And then Knoxville is an incredible city. It's called the Maker City. Yeah. So like you can throw a rock and hit like three markets or pop-up events of any kind happening in town. And there's also just so many cool other community maker spaces in Knoxville that I partner with a lot. So yeah, I try to do a couple events a year or a couple events per month, and then the rest of the month is kind of supplemented with folks that come out to my studio for portrait private sessions.
Sure. Yeah, that's probably all you want to pack all that stuff up and haul it around, anyways,
Yeah,
once or
the
twice a
older I
month.
get, the more that I'm like less interested in schlepping this stuff around. I love when my work comes to me. Let's just say that.
What's the biggest difference in your process between your studio sessions and your kind of pop up sessions?
The pop-up sessions definitely feel a little more hurried. I try to make as many plates as I can, just, to pay my bills. And it's also a way to just like participate in community things and to get my face and name out there. I end up, even if I don't photograph somebody that day, they stop by, they say hi, they take a business card, and then they're in my inbox a month later trying to come out here to my studio. So it's really a way for me to like maintain an anchor in the community that I live in, and get my name out there, get folks interested. Sometimes they're like, what the hell is this? And you have to explain to them, like what you're doing and why it's cool and why it costs $85 or whatever. And then they get interested, they think, wow, I can't believe someone is out here still doing this, and you're like, heck yeah, man, come out to the studio and you can get it done too. So it's a way for me to kind of like, you know participate and then get people interested enough to come out to my studio. So it's definitely, it's fast paced, but when people come to my studio, we get to slow down, we get to know each other better, we get to talk shop a little bit. They tell me about the tintypes they have of their great great grandparents. It's much more personal and slow, which I prefer.
Okay. I wondered if maybe the fast paced and the maybe the limited touch time or exposure to being around other people, maybe the pop up sessions might fit better with someone, as you said, kind of a self proclaimed introvert.
Yes, that, I joke all the time. I worked at the mall for a long time, when I was young, and you learn really quick how to be an extrovert, like a perform extroversion, and it helps with this process because I find that I feel like a ringleader of a circus when I'm like out at a pop-up event where you've got to talk fast, you got to get the info to people quick, you got to work quick, you got to like step right up and see this crazy magic happening kind of thing. And it's helpful for that. And then I come home and I crash and I say no words for 3 days.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, I kind of feel like the a snake oil salesman of sorts whenever I'm
Yes,
out in public like
yes.
that. So
100%. I'm just missing like a coat with tails.
I had read, this was a quote I think that you had mentioned, that the camera kind of acts as a barrier and it allows you to interact easier with other people. I feel very similar. I mean, I almost feel like I need to psych myself up and switch to kind of this tintypist persona before every session, right? So, what what
Yes, yes.
what tips do you have for other wet platers to kind of create a creative space for your sitters, as well as provide a comfort zone for you as the photographer?
I feel like I learned a lot about this from being the amount of public speaking that I used to have to do as a gallery director was more than I was used to. And so I didn't mean to learn how to public speak this way, but I would just black out a little bit. And my brain just went on stand up mode where it was like, okay, if you make them laugh, then they're having a good time. So like I would just kind of black out and like make sure that I got all my talking points in, but the whole time it's like make them laugh. And so I feel like if you can like ease people, I mean, getting your picture made is not a common thing that we do anymore as a species, which is unfortunate. And so coming to some stranger studio in the holler, in a barn, it's like, it's takes a lot of trust for people to like do that, and show
Sure.
up. And so I really value that people are putting themselves out there that way. So I want to meet them with that same amount of like energy and bravery. And so I just like try to get people to laugh as much as possible. I give them as much information as possible so that they understand what's happening. And it's a lot of talking. I do a lot of talking, and I find that it often puts people at ease a little bit. They get to learn a little bit about me, that I'm not like an axe murderer in the woods, that I'm just here to make sure that they
Yep.
look beautiful and feel beautiful in this picture. And I find that it really helps.
I would agree. I feel the same way. My wife and I operate our studio here at our house, and it seems like I always say something to her about, am I talking too much at the beginning? You know.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, sometimes my husband is in his studio working, and I get the nervous chatters, and the clients will leave, and sometimes people are really vocal about how much fun they had. Some people wear their emotions on their sleeves, and exactly what, like, they leave your studio and you go, they had a great time. But sometimes you get people, they leave your studio and you're like, I have no idea if they were just miserable that whole time, if they hated everything. Like, some people are just really hard to read. And I'll look at my husband and be like, did I nervous vomit chatter all over them? And he'll be like, yeah, you might have given them a lot of information.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you're not necessarily a gearhead, but let's talk a little bit about what you're using. So, what type of camera? What's your general setup these days?
Yeah, so my MO for gear has always been, is it free? Is it cheap? So
Okay. Yep.
at this point for wetplate, I have two cameras that I use. The first one, I like to say I rescued it from the university I went to. It was going to go to surplus, which is where equipment goes to die. And a grad student at the time was like, "Boy, it'd sure suck if this camera went to surplus, wink." And I was like, "You're right, wink, that would suck." So I rescued the 4x5 that I started with. And that is a Calumet monorail,
Okay.
like a 1970s Calumet, which has been a wonderful workhorse for me. Super sturdy, love it to death. And then it's actually the camera that I learned 4x5 film on, so it's really special. And then now my most recent camera purchase was a Cambo 8x10 monorail.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I'm still taking name suggestions. But yeah, so I use that and I have a 4x5 reducing back for it and a 5x7 back as well. So those are the two cameras that I use for wet plate at this point.
Okay. What size plates are you typically making in a studio session?
I mean, I 4x5s are the most common event size, but in a studio session here, I do a lot of a lot of 5x7s, which I just don't like. I don't like the proportions of 5x7s. I struggle a lot with the 5x7 ratio, and 8x10 for sure.
Yep. Okay. What about a lens? Did you find a free or really cheap Darlow or something laying around? Some of you know
Yeah,
what it was.
I know the least amount about lenses. I have used lenses that have been given to me. So much of my practice and my equipment have been objects or pieces of equipment that have been given to me from other photographers who threw in the towel, which I totally get. But so I couldn't even tell you what kind of lens I'm shooting with right now. I actually wrote it on my hand to look at what lens I had for this purpose, but I sweated it off in the garden, so I didn't have the note anymore. But I do know that it stops down to a 4.5, and I believe it stops up to an f11.
Okay.
But in my head, I have a portrait lens and a landscape lens. What those things are called, I could not tell you. They're pretty modern, though. They're not historic by any means. Historic equipment kind of makes me a little bit nervous.
Sure. Sure. What's your okay? So if you're shooting outside, how are you making corrections based on how cloudy it is or what time of day? What's kind of your mental process for thinking that through?
Oh my gosh, I'm such a shoot from the hip person. I try not to overthink it. I try to put people in open shade. I love putting their backs to the sun and getting that like hate like divinity halo around their hairline. Like I love that. So any way that I can get that shot is what I will like. That's what I would go for gutturally. I try not to put people in the direct sun. My husband has, I've probably made 1,000 pin types of just him, as a test sitter, and he is just the world's biggest squinter. So I'm really sensitive to making sure that I'm not putting people through squint torture. So yeah, usually direct, like open shade, the backlight is what I go for.
Sure. Are you counting in Mississippi's or Tennessee's?
I'm counting in Mississippi's, but maybe I should be counting in Tennessee's.
Uh, why not? Why not?
Wow. Yeah.
If there was one piece of equipment that you could track down that was insanely cheap, what would it be?
Probably a better tripod.
Okay. All right. What do you got?
Yep.
Old
Nothing
wooden leg
romantic, but a
Kodak.
tripod. No, I honestly I have a wooden leg tripod and I don't trust it.
Yeah.
I love the old school equipment, but I don't like using it. I would rather have a good sturdy Manfrotto or, something like that.
Sure. Well, let's switch over and talk about your subjects. What's kind of your favorite subjects that you like to shoot? So let's say that you've got somebody coming in for a portrait session, and you're thinking about, okay, I've never met this person, but I hope that blank.
I think that my favorite types of folks to photograph. I do a festival here in Cookeville, Tennessee, every summer called Muddy Roots Music Festival. And this, I mean, the folks that attend this festival are so beautiful and so incredible. They are my ideal subjects. Like everyone looks like they just hopped off a train, that they've been riding for months. Like, everyone's got such a story. Like, they walk into my space and, like, they are so storied. Like, they are not wearing, like, they're wearing clothes that they've hand patched on the road. They've got, like, like, worn look of wisdom about them. And they're, like, some of the kindest people I've ever met. They'll bring you a snack if you look tired and hungry. Like, they're fantastic. And so all throughout the year, I make so many plates at this festival, and I meet some of the coolest freaking people at this festival. And I post those tintypes all year long. And they're just, they've got their vests covered in patches from every, event they've ever been to. They're like covered in studs and leather and denim, like all the textures, all the piercings, like give me all your face tattoos. Like, yes, please, amazing
Nice.
people that are just gorgeous, and those are my favorite types of folks to photograph.
Okay, great. Oh, this is the process for very unique people, I think.
Yes, yes. And like, couples are awesome. Couples are in my studio all year long. They come in their best dressed, their Sunday best or whatever. But I'm really interested in the folks that come in wearing, what they wear every day. I'm really drawn to the crowd that I get at Muddy Roots.
Okay, so I've seen what I would call a viral video of you and Joe Brown, and it's about things typically heard during a tintype session. How did that video come together?
I think it comes together like a lot of things Joe does. That man is spinning 1,000 plates a day. He visits me usually once a year now, at the farm, and he was like, "I've got this idea for these videos that I want to do, and they're going to be really funny, and I want to do them with all the other wet plate photographers that I meet. Do you want to do one?" And I was like, "Oh boy, Bubby, I don't love being on camera, and I don't love being recorded, but sure, like just let's do it. Fine, whatever." It's hard to look him in the face and say no. So I said yes, and we made a silly little video that like got a bajillion views, and I was like, oh my god, great, 1,000, a million people have seen this. But they ended up being really funny, and I love the ones he's done with others.
Yeah. What are some of those most common things that you hear in your studio?
Oh, I think I blinked. Of
Yeah.
course, like everyone thinks they blinked. I unfortunately have a unique issue where my proximity to Gatlinburg and Dollywood makes it where sometimes I get folks that come in and they ask me where my outfits are. And they think
Uh,
that I've got old outfits for them to wear. And I have to be like, uh-oh, that's not the kind of tintype studio this is. I had a couple once come out and they were honeymooning in the Smokies, and bless their hearts, I love when people they go the extra mile to find someone doing like the true authentic tintype thing. Because I don't know if your listeners have been to Gatlinburg, but you can throw a rock and hit five old time studios, quote unquote,
yep.
old
Yep.
time photo, where you go in and you wear like the saloon outfits, and they give you like the pew pews to hold and like fake bags of money and whatever. And so my proximity to that, I think, makes people think that I have that stuff too. And so this couple, bless their heart, they showed up in their jammies and asked me where the outfits were. And I said, oh, honey, I don't have those. And so we had to photograph them in their jammies. So I get a lot of that. Where are the outfits?
that that is definitely a memorable session.
Yes, I will never forget it. And that's when I had to put, on my FAQ that I do not have outfits for you to wear. Please bring your own.
Right, right. No, that's good. Outside of the some of the folks that you've met in the wet plate community, is there anyone that you would really love the chance to photograph?
Oh yes, this is my favorite question that you ask
All
people.
right, let's hear it.
The two, like I have like my shallow answer and my like genuine heartfelt answer.
Okay.
The genuine heartfelt answer is that I wish I could photograph my papa. He obviously passed away before I learned this process.
Yep.
So that's something that I would want to be able to do, travel back in time. But my more shallow answer is that I want to photograph Patti Smith so bad. Patti Smith is just such an incredible writer and an incredible musician and like such a beautiful person. And also Tom Waits. So Patti Smith and Tom Waits are like my celeb list, I guess.
Well, I would say that if we had more than about 10 people or so listening to this podcast, that, maybe there was a chance we could get somebody to reach out to those folks, but I'm not sure that we
I
have quite
was
the
once
viral
in,
capability for that.
yes, I know. I was once almost had the chance to photograph Patti Smith. She was doing a festival in Knoxville. So we were in the same city and I was photographing on a street corner. And everyone that passed me, I was like, y'all pray for me. Just send her my way.
That's great.
One day.
Yeah, one day. Okay, so anybody that's listening, if you've got connections, please get a hold of Kelsey.
Please, y'all, send Patty to me. Or
That's right.
I'll go there, wherever. I don't care.
I have seen this kind of viral thing on TikTok here lately, where it's like, oh, my husband says if I can get 3 dealerships to comment on my post, then he can buy a Corvette or something, or something like that. So there's still a chance. There's still a chance
I
that
hold
this
out
could
hope.
happen.
I had somebody asked me that recently, and I said Tom Waits, and they were like, he's dead. And I was like, no, he's not. So I keep tabs on these two people. Don't worry.
Okay, all right. Well, let's move into more on the creative side. And maybe this is just me, but sometimes I feel like collodion doesn't get a fair shake in kind of modern photographic awards. That
Mm.
maybe there's this gap in using the process and being creative with the process. Do you submit your work to a lot of photographic competitions?
I don't, but maybe we should. Like, are we not? Is that why? Are we not like putting ourselves out there in those spaces? I wonder.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't consider a lot of my work to be extremely artsy, right? I mean, as a portrait photographer, there's only so much you can do inside of a studio.
Now, I
But I,
did see recently that what's I don't want to mispronounce her name, but Tally Spitzer, I believe. I think that she is an indigenous wet plate artist, and I think it's called Analog Forever, and they do a lot of like online juried exhibitions, and they've been recently doing one for Pride Month of LGBTQ plus photographers, and her tintype portraiture is in there, and it is gorgeous.
okay, well there you
So
go.
I was happy to see that for sure. But I just follow, my feed is so wet plate heavy that sometimes I feel like it's everywhere, but it's only because I've got my nose in that pool so deep that like I think if I zoomed out, I would realize that it's not as like ubiquitous as it might appear on my feed. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure. I tend to find that anybody that I ask them what a tintype is, they have no idea what I'm talking about. So
Yeah, I don't know. I think it might also be dependent on the region that you live in. Like, I feel like being in Tennessee, the South, Appalachia, people are more familiar with that kind of thing because, like, history is so present around us here that I think more people understand what a tintype is than not. But again, I think that could be regional.
sure. Yeah, and you had mentioned that you occasionally have folks that come in and they've got these same types of images that have been passed down in their families for
Yeah,
generations. I think that is fantastic. I really wish that I had access to pictures of my family from that time, but to my
me
knowledge, they're not
too.
out there.
Yeah, I put that out into the ether all the time. People tell me about those pictures, and I'm like, bless your heart, hold on to those for dear life because I have not found some of my own family yet. And I'm so jealous.
Yeah. You had mentioned platinum palladium process as one
Hmm.
that's maybe a favorite of yours that you're looking into. What have you got in mind for that? Of course, we can
Well,
create collodion negatives. Are you looking at doing prints of those or something else?
yes. I mean, I do not have, I think I've made one ambrotype at Lisa's workshop. And so I really, really would love to do more ambrotypes and collodion negatives because I want to bridge that gap between my silver gelatin printing work and this process. So that's definitely a goal of mine. And I love platinum palladium. It's a little rich for my blood. Like I don't think I could afford to learn how to use that process in any way. But I'm just like that's another process that just like takes my breath away. I When I was in college, I was working for the Kennedy Museum of Art, and I was doing their art handling at the time. And one of the first exhibitions I ever installed was of Frank Hunter's work. I think he's an American photographer. I think he's in his 70s now. But he had, I think they were, like 20 by 24 platinum palladium prints. And, I've been around photography for a really long time. I've seen a lot of photography in my life, and these just took my breath away. Like they were just so gorgeous, so ethereal, and like that was the moment that I was like, I have got to see how this is done. So that's still on my bucket list of like I would just love to see how to watch it done.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I'm just like completely infatuated with platinum palladium. I love Clarence White's work too, old school photographer from back in the 1870s. And I'm pretty sure he did a lot of platinum palladium too, but there's a look about it that just feels like it's from another time, from another world that I'm really attracted to.
Yeah. I think the one thing about collodion that is kind of an encouragement to check out these other processes is that, it's a somewhat complicated process. I mean, it does take some practice, but once you figure it out, it's kind of like, oh, I figured that out. I should be able to figure out how to do this.
Well, and it's a bridge, right, between so many other processes. Like once you get that negative, you can use that negative
Exactly.
for so many processes, which is kind of also another way that I found myself here because I was doing a lot of experimental gum bichromate work back in 2019, and I was just like wringing myself out trying to make digital negatives. I was like, this is exhausting and I hate this. I hate printers, like I hate printing on transparencies. And I have not circled back to gum bichromate because I really like kind of tuckered myself out with it. But it's just collodion's so cool because it is that like it's every other process's first cousin.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to be able to easily move into some of those other processes, and there are so many of them out there. That's what I
Yeah.
find is incredible is that you can do a search, and it's not just the big ones that we've talked about. There's probably 40 other processes out there that have come
That
and
I've never even
gone.
heard of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think that my landmates here and I we talk a lot about process and repetition. They're printmakers, and so we talk a lot about how printmaking and photography are like first cousins also, and the overlaps that happen in those two processes. And I mean, photography, if you think about it, that's our youngest art medium. Like photography is so young compared to literally any other medium that we're familiar with. And the fact that it is also so like the wild west of mediums is like it's really incredible. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's so true. I never really thought about that as being really the youngest. I mean, it seems like a very old process, but it's kind of on the tail end of artistic representation of.
Right. I mean, you think of painting, sculpture, clay, all of these materials are ancient, and photography is just a little bitty baby.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've talked a little bit about experimentation, so I'm going to ask you what's the biggest disaster that you've experienced using the collodion process?
Oh my God, it's really embarrassing because Joe was here and got to watch me do it. I was walking my silver bath. I bought some like dinky little 8x10 silver bath on like Etsy or something. I don't even
Okay.
know who made it. And it was not good. And all of the hardware rusted on it immediately. So my lid didn't latch closed anymore. And Joe and I were walking from my shed, which is farther away from the barn where my studio is now. And I was holding it like a dummy with one hand, and I dropped an 8x10 tank filled with silver in my driveway.
Oh,
And we both just like stopped and stared at it and like didn't breathe for a while. And it was terrible. And not only was it terrible because I lost all that silver, but it stained like a 4x4 foot
oh,
black, just big black spot in my driveway
it's
that
this
I got to look
constant
at for,
reminder.
yep. Yep. Every time I look out my window, I go, look, there's all my silver nitrate on the ground. Awesome.
Well, it's only money, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I felt bad for the ground. Like that spot was black for years.
Yeah.
Like that's gnarly stuff, y'all.
Wow. Let's move over to something a little bit more serious. You had been giving your followers some updates about a health scare over the last year or so when you thought maybe collodion was a factor. Luckily, you're still shooting, but what was kind of going through your mind at this time about
Oh,
your
I mean,
future with tintype?
it was awful. I mean, I had never felt more like I don't even have really words. I really don't think I'm 98% sure that wet plate had nothing to do with it at this point in time. I was diagnosed. It took 3 months to get a diagnosis, but I was actually it was last April, and I was working in my studio, and I was getting ready for an event in Kentucky. And one moment I was watering my potato bed, and 6 hours later, I was in the hospital and I couldn't move the upper part of my body and I could barely walk and I had no idea what happened. And, it took 3 months and a lot of MRIs that came back with nothing for a neurologist to diagnose me with something called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a really rare neurological autoimmune disorder. And the bummer of it is that I don't think that I'll ever know what caused it. It's an autoimmune response, so it could have been anything. But it was really scary. I thought that, I'm a hard committer. I've been in photography since I was, 15 years old. And I thought that this thing that I loved more than anything on earth was like killing me. Which, I guess in some ways, it every time you huff that ether, it might take a few minutes, from your life. But I really thought that the thing that I loved most was something that I wouldn't be able to touch again. And so my studio stood still for, the better part of 10 months. And it was really hard to kind of go back and pick up the pieces from there. But I feel I'm in a lot better of a place now, and I'm really glad. I had a lot of metals testing done, and even the doctors were like, "What?" They were like, "What do you want us to test you for? What do you mean you deal with metal salts?
Cadmium.
Like."
What do you need tested for cadmium for?
Right, yes. And it's funny, my papa works for OSHA, and he was sending me like the safety data sheets. He was like, will you send me a list of all the chemicals you use? And I was like, sure. And he, sends me back all of the safety data sheets for like literally every chemical that I use. And he was like, and I've always been a very safe photographer. I use gloves, I use aprons, I use respirators. Like, I really do not like having chemical coated hands at all. And while I don't think that wet plate had anything to do with it now, I am still extremely, like, even more cautious than I was before, just because it scared the piss out of me.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it wasn't a factor for sure.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too. And it was so sweet to have, like, this community is so small and mighty. And I had so many sweet people reach out and be like, oh my God, keep me updated. Like, I hope you're well. And so, yeah, it was very sweet to have the wet plate community kind of checking in and being so communicative during that time.
Sure, sure. Well, that said, I mean, we're 5 years down the road from when you first saw or started learning about the process. What's been your biggest motivation to keep doing what you're doing?
I mean, honestly, it's the way that it's received from the people that I photograph. I mean, I have had just like getting the teary-eyed reaction when they see their plate come through the fix. I mean, I think all of us are really hook, line, and sinkered by the way that people respond to seeing themselves this way. I mean, I think a lot about those first folks in the 1800s, like watching themselves for the very first time reflected on an object that wasn't themselves. I think about those people a lot and like how wild of an experience that must have been. And then I think about the lives that we live now and how we might take 100 pictures a day. Or, I've got nieces and nephews who are not going to have childhood photo albums like physically that they can touch and look at. Like all of their memories, all their childhood memories are like in the cloud or on Facebook. And it's just so important to me to remind people of like how special and how important it is to have themselves represented in a tangible object, like staking that flag in the ground that's like, I was here, this is evidence of my existence, I matter in the world. And I feel like this process really brings that home for people. Like they're going to have this object for the rest of their lives. They're going to pass this object down to other people in their family. Like that object, this photograph is going to be here longer than like the me and the sitter combined. And I really think that this process helps really drive home that importance to people and like that value in the handmade object that we just have really lost in the past few decades. So that's really what keeps me going.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we know how special a process it is, and I always want to make sure that my sitters also understand how special it is that this object that we're creating is going to be around, likely hundreds of years from now,
Yes,
and that
yes.
their likeness will be looked at in some physical form. It's not going to be this maybe digitized kind of thing from the cloud, if even if that still exists or is still around. This will be an object that someone can look at and see them and see what they look like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think of all the floppy disks out there and like what's even on them. No one will ever know, but we'll always have this photograph that you can hold with your hand and say, "Look, that's my great great grandma Jessica, and wasn't she a babe?" Like it's just so important to have those tangible memories of like the people in your life. I mean, I'm so sentimental when it comes to things like that, and I can't imagine not having tangible photographs of my grandparents. Like I don't know. I try really hard to like bring people onto that soapbox with me of like this matters because you can hold it and it's wonderful.
Yep, absolutely. Kelsey, do you consider yourself to be a mentor to others in this process?
I don't know if I am like at a point where I would consider myself a mentor to anybody. I have had many incredible mentors myself, and I aspire to be a future mentor. And so I hope, I've had so many awesome people that have helped me in photography and just in life along the way. And I really hope that I can like pass that down. But I don't know. I don't know. I guess that's a question for other people. It's not really a question for me, but I hope that I could be a mentor to somebody someday.
Sure. Have you been asked to teach a workshop or do a one-on-one session with somebody just to kind of teach them the process?
I have been asked before. I have often turned it down just because I still felt so like such a newbie. I've been like felt like such a rookie to the process that I didn't feel confident enough to follow that through. And I always point people in the direction of others in the game that have been in there much longer and are much better at it than I am. So I point a lot of people to Lisa. I point a lot of people to Dave at VPS. I just have not felt competent enough. Although, as time goes on, I'm definitely open to taking on like one-on-one mentorships. And I do a lot of demonstrations for like colleges or arts organizations. But in terms of actually teaching people, I've just wanted to feel a lot more solid in my own practice and like safety practices too. Like the last thing I want is for someone to like learn something from me, go home and hurt themselves or something.
Uh,
So I just, I'm getting to the point where I'm open to it, but for now I kind of point people towards like the real pros.
sure. Yep, understandable. Who are some of the other photographers in the practice today that inspire your work, or you kind of maybe reach out to occasionally?
I reach out to Lisa a lot. She's wonderful. She before you even leave her workshop, she is like, if you ever have questions, call me, text me, whatever. Call her, beep her if you want to reach her. She is wonderful and always answers questions to the best of her ability. A lot of times, she's like, "Girl, I don't know what you're doing," or send me a picture of your setup, to like help diagnose any issues. But Lisa's been really wonderful for that. At this point, a lot of times I'll ask Joe questions about, different types of professional things. He's just been around the block with so many different types of work that he's really knowledgeable about different things like that. So I definitely tap different people for different things. I think that everybody's got their strong suit in this process, and like, everyone has something different to offer. And almost everyone is so open and generous with their knowledge. So definitely those two in wet plate specifically, I will reach out to with questions. Yeah.
Great, great. Now those are definitely top-notch resources to have access to.
Yeah, hashtag blessed for sure.
What's a good insider secret that you can share with folks about the tintype process? Maybe something
Oh
that
my
you've
God,
picked up.
don't buy new stuff. I have had people, you know, I'm not even gonna get into it, but one of my biggest soapboxes with this process is that like you can make this process work using garbage. Like I used the same gas station water bottle to like rinse my plates after, developing for years. Like I have used like just trash to make this process. And that's mostly because I don't have a lot of money and I was raised really poor and so I'm just really used to scrapping it up. And being really scrappy with things. And this process has such an expensive entry. It can be really, really expensive to get into this process, especially if you're like trying to buy new gear and all that stuff. So I am like my biggest, I guess, piece of advice is to like use what you have on hand. You can make tintypes using a pinhole camera. You can make tintypes with trash. Like you don't need to buy a fancy new camera. You don't have to buy, it's cheaper to mix your own chemistry. And so I've always done that. I've never used kit purchased, pre-made chemicals. So like mixing your own stuff is always like the cheaper way to go usually. So yeah, my advice is to just like slow down on the buy-in, see what you can make with trash,
Sure.
basically.
And especially in this practice, I mean, it seems like there are tons of new people that are coming into it every day, but not very many people are kind of sticking it out and getting through the tough spells at the beginning,
Hmm.
right? So probably best
Yeah,
not
and it
to
makes it
waste.
hard because if you sink a lot of money into trying to get into this process and then realize like, oh man, this isn't for me, then you're in the hole, like you've got all of this equipment that you're probably going to sell to somebody like me for nothing. But yeah, so, people I think really get excited about it, which of course they do. It's an exciting process and everyone wants to buy the speedotrons and that stuff's really, I mean, that thing's more than my car, like so it's good to slow down and to take a breath and to make with what you have and see if it's for you.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. Very good. Kelsey, I really appreciate you taking time to sit down and chat today. How do people that want to see your work or maybe have a portrait taken by you, how do they connect with you?
Yeah, I am most active on Instagram. Actually, I think that's the only at this point platform that I have. But you can find me on Instagram at Kelsey Tierra Photo. Tierra is my middle name. I am not obsessed with crowns of any kind. It's just my middle name.
Okay.
I've had people ask me about that before, and I'm like, nope, that's just my middle name. So yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Kelsey Tierra Photo, and then I do all of my bookings through my website via email. So you can find me on the internet at kelseytdillow.com. And yeah, I think that's all the places I am.
And don't come in your pajamas.
Please don't come in your gym jams unless they're awesome and like silky or something.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Kelsey, for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chad. It's been a real treat.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode and maybe even picked up some insights that will help you along in your own wet play journey. I'd love to hear from you on who you'd like to have on in a future episode. So send me a message and follow our Instagram account at 10 questions with any feedback. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast provider. Thanks for listening to me, Chad Shryock, and my expert guests, and I look forward to you joining me again in the coming weeks for a new episode of 10 Questions.